Ex-prisoners of Reddit, what was the scariest encounter you had with another prisoner? The biggest reason this was scary was because I was so close to going home and didn't want to risk losing any good time. I did a year in prison about 10 years ago when I was 19 to 20. Had a previously clean record and never been locked up before, so going straight to prison I was admittedly a little scared at first. But honestly, it's 99% boredom, and the vast majority of people avoid trouble to just do their time so they can go home or not lose privileges. Anyway, when I was about 2 weeks shy of getting out, a skinhead dude covered in Nazi tats and such, face tats and all, pulled me to the side in the bathroom, open double-decker cell block with day room, free access to roam throughout during the day, and told me that me and my cellmate needed to quiet down up there. He said his cell was right below ours, and that he couldn't sleep because of all of the noise we were making. Basically just said, sorry bro, didn't think we were very noisy, but I'll try to keep it down. He said something like, I'm not sure what you and that nigger are doing up there, dancing with each other or something fucking dumb like that. I was pretty much just like lol, and I guess he could tell by my body language that I wasn't taking him very seriously, and I thought it was ridiculous. And this triggered him to the point where veins were popping out of his face and neck, said something about disrespecting him blah blah blah, kicks off his prison-issue sandals and takes off his ID card. I guess that's what they do before they fight, and kind of corners me into the bathroom. I tell him I'm not disrespecting him and this is a misunderstanding, chill, etc., and he is adamant that I'm disrespecting him and he's not going to get punked. There were other inmates in the area that were obviously aware of the situation, and I was faced with the dilemma of looking like a bitch and going home on time, or fighting this dude and losing good time. I chose the former. But I was also worried that if the dude attacked me, I'd probably end up losing good time regardless. I just tried to defuse the situation by walking away, and he would keep stepping in front of me, and while this is happening I notice he has one hand in his pocket. If he's holding a fucking shank or what, so eventually I just breezed by him out of the bathroom and into view of the guard kiosk thing and went back to my room with hurt pride, but whatever. This post is getting long, but this is how it ended. When I got back to my cell, my cellmate made some offhand joke about why I was gone so long, so I told him what happened. My cellmate was a super cool, older, very large black dude for context. After I told him what happened, he was like, fuck that piece of shit Sully, you're going home, I'll handle this motherfucker. He then picks up a chair and starts slamming it on the floor of our cell, as to provoke the skinhead prick. Within seconds, skinhead prick is at the door peering through the little window, pointing at me. My cellmate opens the door and says that was me, you want to come in here and talk about it? Cellmate tells me to leave, so I leave, and skinhead dude walks in and the door closes. After a few minutes, skinhead dude walks out, doesn't even look at me and walks back into his own cell. So I go back to my cell and ask WTF happened, and my cellmate was super vague and just told me it's over, don't worry about it. Honestly, I have no idea how he defused that situation. I ran into skinhead dude a few times after that and he actually apologized, said that after being locked up for so long and doing years in the hole, solitary, that he has a short fuse and it was a misunderstanding. He even gave me a brownie one day, very odd. Mine's quite mild and also in the UK, but I had a padmate, cellmate for American folk. After bang up, which is a 7 p.m. when you get locked behind your door for the night, it's really boring, and my padmate and I would wrestle. It made the time go quicker and made you better at fighting and was fun. But sometimes we would take it too far. He was a lot bigger than me, and he would often say I bet I could choke you out and make it look like suicide. Now saying this once is scary enough and you would just chalk it up as thinking out loud, but to routinely say it was scary because I think he was close to doing it. Because he started to get predatory. After a few weeks together we got on alright, but he had terrible masculinity problems. I'm tall and wide naturally but slim, he's fairly tall but narrow, but works out a lot, but his frame is naturally smaller than mine and it really used to irk him. We also had bunks and I was there first, so I was on the bottom bunk, he was on the top. He hated being on the top. So he would often jump off the top and start wrestling me very aggressively. I would say no because I was usually reading a book, and he would carry on and choke me. A couple of times he came up behind me and very nearly choked me out. Now I could see this getting a bit out of hand, so as I used my criminal mind, I used my powers of manipulations. We have TVs in our pads, and a remote. The remotes often go missing and get stolen. My padmate had some beef on the wing with some of the young offenders. They spiked his cigarette with spice and made him look like a fool. Now these particular young offenders were dealers, so I gave a remote to a druggie to sell to them for spice. So when my padmate came back, I said the young offenders came over looking for you earlier, and he said I speak to them in the morning. Noah's bang-up came. We turned the TV on and started looking for the remote, but of course it wasn't there. So I turned to him and started saying the only people that came here were the young offenders. It must be them. I started winding him up all night about how they made him look a fool with the spice, and they must think you're a fool, an easy target. His masculinity went into overdrive. He was pacing and getting angry. I said, you need to sort them out. You've brought that here. I don't mess around with young offenders. They're too cocky. He was pacing some more, furious. He got so angry. Next morning 7 a.m. comes round, we're unlocked. He's still angry. I didn't get the reaction I wanted. I thought he would storm out. So I went to get a shower. As I was in the shower, I looked and saw my padmate walking down the landing, past the young offender's pad. He double-took seeing the remote on the side, and went mental, and starting banging out the two inside. Now anyone who's been to prison in the UK knows that you don't touch young offenders as they're seen as kids. So people took very unkindly to this and ganged up on him and chased him off the wing. There was no way he would be allowed back on the wing. He was carted off to the block. So I was tasked with packing his shit. I took most of his stuff and sold it. There are different factors for classifying inmates: current charges, past charges, behavior in jail, etc. Sure, he might have been a murderer, which will make his custody higher, but he's technically in for a drug charge. OP might have been in for a drug charge but have behavior issues, or gang ties, or whatever else. Classification is both subjective and objective. You can override up for various things, or override down. It's often a case-by-case thing, but there are still rules. You have basic criteria, but you can't paint everyone with the same brush if circumstances demand more nuance. If someone is a kitty fucker but only scores out to minimum custody, you might bump it up if he did something particularly heinous. Similarly, you might bump down a guy who has a mile-long criminal record but has more or less calmed down since his days of robbing banks and beating up cops in the 90s. The problem, in my opinion, is that people are more interested in incarceration than in actual rehabilitation. Simply put, jail is seen as the solution by a lot of old-fashioned judges. I've seen a guy get more time for having cocaine for a third time, which, surprise, he's addicted to the shit. Of course he'll get it again, than the fucker that beat his girlfriend into the emergency room.